The water in my Sterling-esque glass pulsed in rhythm with the floorboards. At exactly 21% set the reactor output on the primary terminal, flickering with a dull amber light. Silent was the ship, yet the vibration grew until the fine crystal rattled against the dark mahogany of the desk. The glass, Maya ignored. Instead, her fingers traced a hidden seam in the cuff of her left sleeve with the focused intensity of a watchmaker. 3 paces behind her stood Adjutant Crawl, softly clicked his neck plates in the sterile air of the bridge as he performed his ritual. 1, 2, 3 he counted the recessed lighting strips on the ceiling, his analytical mind seeking order in the human woman's stillness. 2 Crawl. Maya Sterling appeared frozen, her lack of movement a clear sign of biological vapor lock under the pressure of the negotiation. Behind them drifted the deactivated orbital defense platform, the jagged silhouette of cold iron and scrap metal. A tomb for human ambition. I witnessed 10,000 ships turn into silent scrap in seconds. What I saw on that bridge, it changed how I look at the stars. Let me show you what. In the dark vacuum of the Tarnis sector, the first Morva eye signatures tore through subspace. A single red icon blossomed on the long-range sweep, followed by a second, then a 10th. Soon, the sensor screen was smothered by 10,000 red marks. A swarm of steel that blotted out the distant stars of the galactic rim. 10,000 Drekth warships these were, their hulls etched with the aggressive sidles of the Morvi Dominion. The grain in this transmission is terrible, Maya remarked without turning. Her voice was flat, devoid of the jagged edges of panic. Krug, would you ask your superiors if they have tried rebooting their comms array? Shut snapped K-Roll's neck plates at the absurdity. To him, the human's arrogance was a cognitive defect born of a primitive neurology. Her hand, he watched as it moved toward a ceramic teacup, slowly circled her thumb the rim in a hypnotic motion while 10,000 barrels of focused plasma aligned with their hull. Sent from the Drekth flagship was a final ultimatum. It arrived not as a voice, but as a digital scream that bypassed the external sensors and flooded the bridge speakers with the screech of metal on metal. Pride. Crawl felt as he watched the local electromagnetic field begin to warp under the mass of the armada. Across the Dupert erupted a blinding flash of plasma fire, a warning shot that turned the darkness into a brief, violet noon. Maya did not flinch. She was looking blankly at the monitors, her eyes moving in rapid, micro movements that Crawl misinterpreted as the twitching of a dying animal. He did not see the tiny violet pulse beneath the fabric of her sleeve, nor did he understand why the 21% power reading had not budged despite the ship's defensive systems being entirely offline. To the Drekth, she was merely a remnant of a failed species. Into a high-density formation moved the warships, tightening the circle like a closing noose. It was a textbook ambush. On the ship, the low-level alarm began to waylay rhythmic, sobbing sound that echoed through the empty corridors. The hum in the floorboards shifted then, becoming a physical weight that pressed against the soles of K-Roll's feet. A deep cycle resonance it was, making the air itself seem to tremble. They are bunching up, Maya whispered. Her fingers stopped their rhythmic circling. She looked at Crawl, her expression unreadable in the red emergency lighting that turned the bridge the color of old blood. They think the sky belongs to them, don't they? Clicked K-Roll's neck plates in a dismissive rhythm. The sky belongs to those who can hold it. Maya Sterling, you brought a single cruiser to a graveyard. Something was wrong with the sensor readings. The massive signatures of the Drekth fleet were flickering, their digital icons on the bridge displaced uttering, as if seen through a heat haze. Crawl leaned over the secondary console, his analytical mind struggling to process the sudden date option, interference from the plasma fire. He muttered, though the explanation felt hollow. Behind him, Maya Sterling stood up. She did not look at the screen. She looked at the deactivated orbital defense platform, her gaze sharp enough to cut through the vacuum. On the terminal, the 21% reading began to climb in a complex, woven pattern. Outside, the first Drekth ship initiated its firing sequence. The barrel of its main can unglowing with the heat of a dying sun. On the bridge of the flagship Iron Talon, Admiral Vax barked the final command. From 10,000 ships, the primary capacitors hummed with the lethal energy of the Morva Dominion. Maya Sterling stood near the viewport, her gaze fixed on the empty space between the armada and the Defiant. Behind her, Adjutant Krall counted the lights on the ceiling again. 1, 2, 3, his plates clicking in a rapid, nervous callback to his earlier ritual, knuckles white against his console. Ensign Jace whispered a prayer. The 19-year-old navigator did not look at the sensor screen. He looked at the small solar stone he had taped to his station. Its faint orange glow was the only warmth in a room filled with the cold blue light of alien weapon locks. If the Defiant vanished, that tiny ember of home would be the only thing left of the boy's short life. This individual fear Krall witnessed, yet he dismissed it as the final tremors of a broken command. Into the ship's data core surged the Void Weaver algorithm. It was not a defensive wall, but a logic plague, transmitted through the very hum Krall had felt in the floorboards. The 21% power reading my had maintained was never for the engines. It was the precise harmonic frequency needed to turn the Tarn sector's electromagnetic field into a conductive web. This was the fortress she had mentioned, a trap woven from the vacuum itself. Krall watched the monitor as the weak human signature began to bleed into the Drekth ships, infecting their fire control subroutines with a billion lines of ghost code. Maya raised her ceramic cup to her lips. She took a slow, deliberate sip of her lukewarm tea. Silence. Then, the collapse. Maya Sterling traces the rim of her teacup while the Drekth fleet stalls. Gone was the aggression of the armada. Across N,000 Uperts, the Morvi weapon systems simply ceased to exist, not through destruction, but through administrative removal. The Void Weaver had convinced every Drekth ship that their own ammunition was a critical safety hazard. Total was the paralysis as the fleet drifted like empowered debris in the violet shadow of the orbital platform. In the silence of the bridge, Krall heard the faint clink of Maya's cup meeting the saucer. Behind Maya, Adjutant Krall collapsed into his seat. His blind spot, his absolute certainty that Maya's rapid eye movements were a sign of terror, was replaced by a cold, hollow realization. She hadn't been afraid. She had been the architect. The Dominion's hubris had led 10,000 warships into a room where the door only opened from the inside. They were no longer the hunters. They were the subjects of a clinical, human dismantling. By 800, the surrender was signed. The Drekth admiral sat in a humid tribunal, his neck plates silent for the first time in his long career. In the Tarnis sector, the massive fleet was dismantled by human tugboats, their lethal cannons reduced to scrap and sensor buoys. The Dominion would never again look at a deactivated human outpost without feeling the weight of the Void Weaver's gaze. Irreversible was the shift in power, as the Tarnis sector was officially reclassified as the most fortified space in the known galaxy. Violet pulses radiated from the station's core. The emitters remained fully extended toward the galactic rim. A human ship named Remember drifted through the metal debris, steel in shadow against the distant sun. The station hummed in the dark.